The Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line still sucks. So, the Steelers, Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, they added pieces to this offensive line this offseason with Isaac Samalu. They drafted Broderick Jones. So, they added pieces last offseason as well, bringing in James Daniels. But this offensive line this season still looks no different than it was last season. They're still getting pre-snap penalties with false starts. They're still getting holding calls, not as much holding calls, but still holding calls, and they're allowing pressures on the quarterback and not doing a good job in the run game. So it looks really no different than it was last season when Kevin Dotson and Dan Moore Jr. were struggling on the left side offensive line. You would think that bringing in Isaac Samalu from Philadelphia, who had a really good season last year, and then bringing in James Daniels the year before from the Chicago Bears, who also had a really good season with the Bears, you would think that those two guys would have helped the Steelers' offensive line. But no, right now the Steelers' offensive line is still playing really poorly. And here are the numbers to back it up. So, I looked it up, and the Steelers are one of the last teams in the NFL with only 96 rushing yards in the first two games. And also, looking at the Steelers running backs running the ball, the Steelers had 0 rushing yards before contact this season. So that is really poorly. You're telling me that you have 0 rushing yards. Obviously, this is a net number, but 0 rushing yards before contact in the first 2 games of a season, I don't even know how that's possible. So that stat is really bad for the Steelers running backs, for this team in general, because we know what the Steelers want to do. We've seen this towards the end of last season and why they went on the win streak. It was because the running game started to get going. After the bye week, the Steelers were more successful in running the ball, which opened stuff up in the passing game. And that's what the Steelers' offense is built off of. That's what Kenny Pickett wants to do. That's what Matt Canada as a play caller wants to do. Run the ball and then open it up for the passing game. But that just has not happened. And that means that Matt Canada was calling less run plays because they're just not working. I know people are getting on Matt Canada for calling less run plays, but if they're only going for 1 to 2 yards or even negative yards every time you run the ball, the annoying part is, which is keep running run plays and keep getting 1 to 2 yards and putting yourself in a 3rd down and 7 situation every single time. That's why if you run the ball and then pass the ball, sure, at least you give yourself an opportunity to get the 1st down. But if you're just running the ball back-to-back plays, knowing that it's not going to go for nothing, then that's putting you in a poor situation. So I'd rather them throw the ball more unless their running game actually starts getting going. How many times last year were us fans complaining about the Steelers running the ball for 1 yard and then 1 yard again in the 3rd and long? There's no point of keep doing that. Until the run game starts getting going and you know you can rely on it, there's no point of putting yourself in a bad situation on 3rd down by keep running the ball for 1 yard. And you would also think that the run game and the pass game would be better, but it has not been better. And looking at Dan Moore Jr., I could say this. From watching Dan Moore Jr. the first 2 weeks, from going against Nick Bosa to going against Myles Garrett, I'll say this. He did a really good job in the pass game. He allowed 0 sacks for Myles Garrett, and even though some pressures were allowed, obviously you expect Dan Moore Jr. to allow some pressures against Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa, some of the best pass rushers in the league. So him allowing 0 sacks is really a good thing. But he was terrible in the run game. That's the opposing part. Even though he was really good in the passing game against those guys, allowing 0, even though he allowed some pressures, in the run game, he was terrible. And last week, against the Cleveland Browns, he was ranked by PFF as the worst offensive tackle or worst offensive lineman in general for week 2. And also in week 1, in their matchup against the 49ers, he was also ranked one of the worst offensive linemen in the league for week 1. So Dan Moore Jr., I guess in the ranking scale, he's not being ranked as good, but in the passing game and pass protection, he's been kind of solid, but in the run game, he just has not been good. Looking at Isaac Samalu, because he's the left guard, he's been better than Dotson was last year in terms of playing and just overall play style. because of the penalties. Now, he's not getting the penalties that Kevin Dotson was getting, but he still has not been great. He's been solid, and the Steelers' like second best offensive lineman in general, besides James Daniels. But just looking at him, he just does not look like the same player he was early on, because he's still getting used to the Steelers' offense line play style and the Steelers' offense. He's just been getting beat a lot of times and looks like he doesn't know what he's doing sometimes out there yet. But as the season goes along, as he continues to develop in the Steelers system, I expect him to obviously get back to himself. But early on, he just hasn't looked the same player. Looking at Mason Cole, he's been kind of solid. I haven't seen nothing from him that's like too bad, but obviously sometimes he still does get beat, and sometimes he loses his balance quickly on the offensive line and it allows pressures. But for him, he's been kind of solid. He's been obviously better than Kendrick Green when Kendrick Green was here 2 years ago and a really bad center. But obviously Mason Cole, he stepped it up from Kendrick Green and he's been decent. Looking at James Daniels, this is who I believe has been their best offensive lineman. He's been pretty solid in both the run and the pass game, especially the run game. The pass game, he still kind of struggles a little bit, but his strength is the run game. So he's been solid, I believe, and the best Steelers offensive lineman of the season so far, and the best one of last season as well. So since coming over from the Bears, he's been better. But looking at the guy who plays right next to him, looking at that right tackle, Chuks Okorafor, he's been one of the worst offensive linemen, I believe, for the Steelers this season. Because of those penalties, putting the Steelers in a bad situation. The whole thing is, from last season, we need to stop those pre-snap penalties. Stop the false starts, because you're putting the team in a disadvantage and making them have to get more yards, and we're already struggling to get yards as it is. So rebounding those extra 5 yards and trying to regain it will be always hard. And he's putting the Steelers in a bad situation for getting those penalties. And even though he was dealing with a little bit of a concussion, or in at least concussion protocol this week, he was still getting penalties. He was cleared for the game, and he was just not good against the Browns this Monday. He wasn't good, and he was the Steelers' worst offense lineman, I believe, even though Dan Moore Jr. was ranked as the worst, because of those pre-snap penalties, because of the pressures he's allowed, because of the disoriented he looked. But the Steelers' offense line, we all thought it would be better. We all thought we would be able to run the ball this season, be able to run it with Najee Harris, being able to run it with Jaylen Warren. Yes, you could blame the offense line for the struggles, but still, it's kind of still on the running backs too. I won't blame the whole offense line, because Najee Harris just doesn't hit the hole as fast as Jaylen Warren, but he still had to break so much tackles to at least get back to the line of scrimmage. There's no reason why every single play where Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren run the football, they should be getting hit in the backfield and having to break 3 tackles just to get 2 yards. There's no reason why that should happen every single play they run the ball. But it's been happening, and it's been happening for a while. It's been happening all the way since Alejandro Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey, Dave DeCastro were in their final seasons with the Steelers. There's no reason why since then they're still struggling on the offense line to build this offense line. It has me thinking, is it really the offense line that are poor or poor playing, or is it the offensive system in general? Is it the offense line's coach, the mentality that they play with, the mentality of how they set up their blocks, how they want to maneuver the blocking scheme? Is it this offensive coordinator and how he calls plays? Because there's no way that people you add who are good on other teams like Isaac Seumalo, James Daniels are even struggling. If they're good on other teams, how do they just come to Pittsburgh and just automatically struggle in the system? Is that like a regular thing where the offensive system is just poor and poor play calling? Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about it, because I'm starting to think maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not just the offensive lineman being bad or coming here and not playing good. Maybe it's just the system in general in which they play in, and it's not a good system of scheme blocking. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, how you feel about this offense line. Do you believe it still sucks like it did last year, or do you think it's better than it was? Let me know down in the comments below. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below as well if you like serious content, analysis, reports. Like the video, turn on post notifications down below for the channel. Click the bell down below so you never miss out whenever I post the next series video of news, rumors, highlights, reports, analysis, everything like that. I cover everything Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is the best spot for it. But the Steelers offensive line, hopefully they improve, because in order for them to succeed, they have to be able to run the football. They have to be able to give Kenny Pickett time to throw the ball, and hopefully they rebound and were able to play up to their potential like we thought they could. It's not just the run game, it's the pass game as well. Kenny Pickett has been given no time to throw the ball, and he's been having these worries about getting sacked and having to make irrational plays because of the offense line. That's no excuse for him. He's still been bad, but the offense line has also been bad in both the run and the pass game. So hopefully it gets better and the Steelers are able to succeed in that area of running and throwing the football.